Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the communication chain. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, we're going to demystify the massive, hidden digital plumbing that essentially acts as an international game of telephone. It's the exact mechanism that connects global corporate announcements directly to your personal portfolio. And trust me, how an issuer actually reaches a shareholder is anything but basic. So think about it for a second. When a multi-billion-dollar giant like Apple or a massive international bank like HSBC announces a dividend or a complex takeover, how does that news actually reach you? It's not like their CEO is just shooting an email straight to your inbox. Before that news ever hits your brokerage app, it literally has to navigate a labyrinth of international intermediaries. It's crossing time zones, getting translated across different languages, and passing perfectly through completely distinct financial systems. So let's break it down. In the corporate actions world, this communication chain is defined as the flow of event terms from the issuer, who is, of course, the source of the news, all the way down to the position holder, meaning you, the ultimate recipient. This chain is the hidden global plumbing that absolutely must function flawlessly to keep the financial markets synchronized. If this chain breaks, the whole system just grinds to a halt. Section 1. Push versus pull securities. Okay, so the very first rule of engagement for how this information flows depends entirely on the specific type of security you're actually holding. We're looking at two distinct categories here. With registered securities, the company actually knows your name through a registrar. This means they can actively push the information straight down the chain to you. Pretty straightforward. But with bearer securities, the relationship is completely anonymous. The issuer has no idea who you are. Because of that, you, or the agents acting for you, must actively pull that data from public sources or specialized databases. You can't just sit back and wait for the news. You literally have to go hunt it down.
Section 2. SWIFT, the universal language.
Now, let's talk about the sheer scale of this operation. You've got millions of position holders scattered globally across thousands of different systems. Companies absolutely cannot just pick up the phone and call their investors one by one. The volume of data is just staggering. So to handle this massive scale without plunging the global markets into total chaos, the financial industry relies on extreme standardization. The goal here is simple but incredibly difficult to pull off. A message sent by a company in Tokyo has to be flawlessly and automatically understood by a banking computer in London without a human ever needing to translate a single word. So the solution the industry came up with is the SWIFT network, specifically using strict ISO 2002 formats. They use what's called an MT564 message template. You can think of this as the universal language of corporate actions. This template details the absolute nitty-gritty of every single event. We're talking the dates, the rates, the options, all mapped out into specific, rigid fields, so there is absolutely zero ambiguity. And why is this rigid formatting so absolutely crucial? It all comes down to straight-through processing, or STP. Listen, when everyone is speaking the exact same highly structured digital language, computers can automatically read, route, and process this data at lightning speed, completely without human intervention. Information is just shooting across the globe in milliseconds, instantly updating ledgers. It's a beautiful thing when it works. Section 3. Mapping the information journey. All right, let's slow things down for a second and trace the literal step-by-step physical path a piece of data actually takes across the globe to reach you. Step 1 is the origin. The issuer announces the event terms, usually via a formal prospectus or a legal notice. Then we hit step 2, the infrastructure. The issuer's paying agent notifies the Central Securities Depository, the CSD, which holds the master global certificate for those shares. Step 3 introduces the intermediaries. The CSD alerts the massive global custodians, who then cascade that message all the way down to local sub-custodians in your specific home market. And finally, step 4, the final mile. Your personal fund manager or broker gets this verified data and updates the balance that you actually see on your app. It's an incredible, high-speed relay race of data. Section 4. The multi-million-dollar risk. But you know, what happens when that perfectly orchestrated relay race hits a hurdle? Nestled right inside this incredible global infrastructure is a high-stakes villain, human error. Whenever straight-through processing fails, or maybe a system isn't perfectly upgraded, a human being has to step in, and that introduces data capture risk. This entire sprawling communication chain becomes incredibly vulnerable every single time an operations worker has to manually input or rekey data from one computer screen to another. A single typo, literally just a misplaced decimal point on a billion-dollar dividend rate, can have absolutely catastrophic consequences. And the risk just compounds when your sources disagree. I mean, imagine the sheer cold panic in an operations back office when a premier data vendor like Bloomberg gives you one dividend record date, but a competing vendor like Reuters or even your own custodian shows a slightly different date. When that happens, teams have to execute data cleansing. This means frantically cross-referencing and manually verifying multiple sources to find the absolute truth before the market closes. It is incredibly high-stress detective work. Now keep in mind, they are doing all of this frantic detective work against an incredibly unforgiving clock, T plus 2. That's the standard trade settlement cycle, trade date plus 2 days. Operations teams are literally always working under immense pressure, rushing to cleanse and verify data within this highly compressed timeline. There is just zero room for hesitation. Because the margins for error here are terrifyingly thin. We're talking one single hour. If a rekeying error happens or if that data cleansing takes just a bit too long, missing a tight settlement deadline by a single hour can mean your broker entirely loses the right to claim your dividend from the issuer. Millions of dollars can just evaporate, purely due to an operational bottleneck in the chain. Section 5. Talking back to the board. So we've mapped out this perilous one-way street of information flowing from the issuer, through the CSD, down to the custodians, and finally to you. That's absolutely crucial to mastering modern finance, but honestly, it's really only half the battle. Think about this. What happens when an event is voluntary? What happens when a corporate action comes with an election deadline and you actually have to make a choice? How do you send a message back up that exact same chain to tell the board of directors that you want additional shares instead of a cash dividend? Think about how that two-way conversation must work. Keep that question in mind because mastering both directions of this flow is the true key to understanding the engine room of global markets. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.